Will Auburn have the best wide receiver duo in the country? Maybe.
In the world full of podcasts, he's the undisputed heavyweight champion of hot takes, an Auburn sports homer, master of the boog, and message board legend. Get your buttons buttoned and your hats flattened because the Top Button Podcast is about to kick off. And you don't want to miss your courtside seat. Now, here's your host, Charlie Five.
Yes, sir, we're back. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie Five, and we're ready to get after it. Does Auburn have one of the more explosive, the best possible wide receiver duo in the country for 2025? Pro Football Focus put out their rankings, and Auburn's the only team with two guys for wide receiver rankings in the top 10. You have Eric Singleton Jr. at number 5 and Cam Coleman at number 6. We're going to talk about how, this is a huge revelation since Auburn's had, not necessarily the best luck with elite wide receivers over the past several years. Kind of put an end to that, started last year. And then the excitement for 2025 and why this could be one of the best wide receiver duos in the SEC and maybe even the country. But before we do that, you know what we got to do. We got to give a shout out to Uncle Keith's Red Sauce. Go to UncleKeithsRedSauce.com. Use coupon code TheBarn25. Get you some of that tasty Southern style salsa. Got some shipping to Manchester, New Hampshire. All the way up there. You know how I am with geography. That could be basically in Canada to me. It's way up there. We got Uncle Keith's Red Sauce going across the country. You can jump in as well. If you live in Auburn, you can go to any grocery store, it seems like in Auburn, definitely any Publix across the state of Alabama. And then if you can't get access to that, obviously go to the website. Save big per jar. Save big on top of that with the coupon code and support an Auburn family. It doesn't get any better than that. If you love salsa, this needs to be your go-to. Uncle Keith's Red Sauce is good, y'all. All right, let's talk wide receivers. I love these two guys. Auburn has multiple studs, but these two in particular, they're the ones that are getting all the love going into 2025. You got Eric Singleton Jr. and Cam Coleman. And again, number 5 and number 6 on Pro Football Focus wide receiver rankings, the only school in the country to have 2 in the top 10. You know what I always say about Pro Football Focus? If it supports your argument, it's 100% correct. And if it doesn't, they're trash. No, I do like PFF. I think PFF gives you a good storyline, and then you dive in from the statistics and you dive in from the analytics. I mean, they're watching football every day, so they're watching football. They're grading guys. So I think I don't know that I wouldn't always call it the end all be all, but with Pro Football Focus, I think it gives you a good starting point, and then you kind of dig from there. And I like the list they put up, and obviously with 2 Auburn guys, I think it's deserving. If you're talking about returning wide receivers and you look at their production from last year and their trajectory going into 2025, makes total sense. And when you throw in the style of offense that they're going to be playing in, it makes total sense. So start with, obviously, Eric Singleton Jr. He was ranked a little bit ahead of Cam by 1 spot. I mean, look, he had 56 catches, nearly 800 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, averaging over 13 yards a catch. In an offense that I feel like sort of relied upon him. He was, and everybody kind of knew it. But he's done this since he's gotten there. He did it as a true freshman, almost the exact same amount of production his freshman year, and then you move it over to his sophomore year. With his skill set, and for such a small guy and his catch radius, that's what to me is most impressive, to have such a small guy, but he's able to. Hey, it's a vacuum cleaner. When you throw it in his direction, you just look at his highlights. He's going to make a play on. He's got a really good chance to catch it even as a small guy. So he plays bigger than his size. And then obviously you've heard different analysts, you've heard different media folks that have talked with Auburn players, Auburn coaches since these guys have gotten to campus. And I think that, it's been pretty much of a consensus that as soon as he walked on campus, he was the fastest player on the team. So you add proven production. You're adding dangerous after the catch, sorry. And you're adding the speed that you could rival anybody on the team. And the confidence and the swagger that he carries. That's a pretty good combination, guys. That's what you're looking for in a wide receiver. Somebody that knows he's good and then can go back it up. It's no wonder why there's no wonder why he was ranked as the number 5 returning wide receiver for 2025. I mean, he was the number 1 player in the portal, the whole portal, for a very long time until John Mateer, the quarterback from Washington State, went in. That was the worst surprise ever. But so, I mean, this guy's good. Perfect compliment to Cam Coleman. Perfect compliment in this offense. You can move him around. You can put him on the outside, and he can win one-on-one battles. And then you can motion him inside, and he can become a nightmare matchup with a safety. Somehow get him lined up on a linebacker, and it's just you can forget it. I just think about him, coming in motion and then just dragging across the middle and just see what happens. I mean, who's going to keep up with him? Who's going to be able to catch him? It's just he's a big time playmaker, and I love seeing guys like this in this Hugh Freeze offense, because you've seen this offense take guys like that and do incredible things. You've seen him be able to do it pretty much everywhere he's been. So, obviously, you got to have a better quarterback play this year. You got to have a little bit more consistency, and hopefully you get that from Jackson Arnold, and hopefully these tools help him sort of realize the gifts that he has, realize the talent that he has. I think he's probably going to be Eric's going to be, I don't know that we're going to have a true number 1 guy, but these two are going to be 1A and 1B. You almost could have 3 number 1s, but for the purpose of this show, we're going to talk about just Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman. I'm very anxious to see which one of those emerges as like the number 1 guy. It could be a very fun battle to watch, and the competition will be great for this offense. I'm telling y'all, this kid's gonna be good. I cannot wait to see this kid play football at Auburn. I mean, his highlight film is a lot of fun. You need to go look it up. Watch both years. Watch freshman year and sophomore year. He makes some really good plays. He made one play. I think it may be against Louisville. It's he goes up in the back of the end zone and catches one at a high point and toe taps. Stuff that, I mean, elite, like NFL level difficulty catches. He does it quite often. He did it quite often last year, so it'd be something fun to watch. And then you got Cam Coleman, the superstar freshman, now sophomore, 5-star plus, came on strong at the end of last year. People don't realize, you think about the injuries he had a shoulder injury, missed a whole game, and then shoulder is, tough to come back, tough to just get healthy, especially when you're banging in the SEC every single week. And then I think he had a little hammy issue as well. So we didn't even really see Cam Coleman at 100% last year at any point in time. Maybe the first game. In the first game, he scored the first touchdown of the year. I think he had over 100 yards receiving in the first game. And that was obviously a lower opponent. But yeah, this was a kid that was sort of nicked up all year, and he gets a little bit healthy towards the end of the season. The last 3 games, he has the vast majority of his production on the tail end of the season. 37 catches, right at 600 yards, 8 touchdowns as a true freshman, over 16 yards per catch. He was you don't think of guys that are 6'3", 200 plus as being home run threats. You're thinking this guy's a possession guy. He's going to maul a DB. And, he's probably going to, he'll make a catch and then he'll be tackled right after that. That's what you think when you think this is you're using him for mismatches size-wise. No. This guy, hey, blink twice and he'll be running right by you. When I say Eric Singleton Jr. is the fastest guy on the team, it ain't like he's just many, many steps ahead of Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman is a physical freak. And last year he showed a lot of flashes of what we think his top end could be, from, making catches in traffic, 50-50 balls, taking the top off, scoring deep. Think about scoring deep and, that touchdown against Missouri, a deep touchdown, I think, or a really deep catch, 60-yard reception against Texas A&M that we really needed. A lot of times, again, the big touchdown against Alabama, the one-on-one ball that was really poorly underthrown, incredibly underthrown, and he made an unbelievable play on it. I mean, he's already, as a freshman, one of the more dangerous red zone targets, one of the more dangerous downfield targets. So just imagine with another year, and I got somebody else running interference on the other side. I got Eric Singleton Jr. drawing eyes on the other side, and then, all the other weapons you should have in between. So he does have obviously there's some room for growth, and most of us just learning how to play in the SEC, learning how to play in college, learning how to play college football. I think about a play that I don't know that this will happen again. You're talking about playing Georgia, and they're going for the little back shoulder pass, but he's let the DB get leverage on him and run him out of bounds. I don't know that happens again. That's a freshman mistake. That's a high school. When I was in high school and I did that, there was nobody that was either A, big enough, smart enough, or physical enough to be able to run me out of bounds. And that happened, and it took him out of the play like that. Those are the type things that happen to you, and then you fix them and you learn from it. And that's like good experience to be able to build on. I don't see stuff like that happening. I think you're aware, you become aware of a lot more things as you play and as you develop. And then he's been from what I understand, he's been working with Jackson Arnold since he got here, throwing unofficially. Obviously, you can't have practices right now, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we're invested together. We're going to do this thing. That's another thing, man. Cam could go wherever he wanted. Cam could go wherever he wants. That dude loves Auburn. He loves Auburn, and there was not even really a threat ever that he was going to be a portal casualty. And I'm sure he was blown up. I'm sure that he could have made a ton of money in other places. He's locked in, man, and that's what makes me excited about his potential. I mean, you look at Auburn versus this duo versus the SEC and what's returning. I mean, Georgia, I don't know. The Georgia, it blows my mind that they don't have the greatest skill guys in the history of football every single year. What is it about that? I don't really understand what Georgia's doing at wide receiver. They were terrible at wide receiver last year. I'm going to feel like, obviously, this wide receiver room could stack up against theirs easily because I don't know what they have. To me, that was the big weakness. They didn't really have that go-to skill guy last year. Alabama obviously has Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard, the transfer from Washington. They were really good last year. I mean, right at 1,600 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns. So that could be a pretty formidable SEC duo to go up against. LSU, you had a good duo last year with Kyron Lacey and Aaron Anderson. You should get Aaron back. I think Kyron's probably should be done. He was a senior last year. But LSU just pulls wide receivers out of their rear, it seems like. And when you talk about what's funny is I was looking at like how often there's been 2 1,000-yard receivers, and you just look and it's like it happens at LSU all the time. It's crazy. But I don't know. I don't know why you just don't feel like I don't feel like it's just it's hugely publicized. Like I know like a couple of years ago, or no, last year, you had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. Like I remember them being great and Malik obviously going high in the draft, but you don't realize they both went for 2,700 yards receiving and 31 touchdowns. I don't know why. It just doesn't feel like they get the pub. Maybe that's just me. Ole Miss, I don't really know what Ole Miss is going to. Trey Harris was a senior last year. They're probably going to have some portal additions, but you got to think Ole Miss is going to always have an explosive offense, so they got an opportunity to have two good wide receivers. I think this is a duo that could be the best in the S. I mean, if they're already considered one of the best in the country, I can see them stack up against the best in the SEC easily. Like you're talking about elite wide receiver room, which is what Hugh promised and what Hugh wants. I can easily see it. I can go. You can go team by team, and I can easily see how this duo stacks up. When you're talking about potential for both guys going over 1,000 yards, I've heard that question a lot, and I thought, hey, that just doesn't happen very much. It actually, I mean, it's not incredibly rare. I mean, it happened in 2023. It happened in 2021. Happened in 2020. It happened in 2019. It happened in 2019 by two different schools. Alabama and LSU both had two guys go over 1,000 yards. So it's not necessarily as rare as I expected. And I thought maybe, they would cannibalize each other, but it looks like when you have an elite wide receiver duo, they can help each other versus, eat away from each other's targets. Maybe those two guys increase the amount of plays, increase the amount of snaps, which increase the amounts or chances of, getting more targets, getting more receptions. So this could be the best chance Auburn's going to have. This will be the best chance that Auburn's had in quite some time. And you have to go back to, I mean, the closest would be probably what Duke and Sammy both had, over 700 yards in 2014. I mean, some of those 2000, that receiver that Ben Obamanu, Courtney Taylor, Devin Aromashadu, I'm sure they probably had some seasons where they got relatively. That 2004 season probably was pretty close. When I say close, I mean they probably had a couple of guys over 700 yards. But there's really not been many that have even scared 1,000 yards singular. You had Keandre Lambert-Smith was only like 20 yards shy last year, but I mean, I think you got the potential. You could have two this year. I'm starting to come around on that. I was a hard no, and now I'm starting to come around. The crazy thing is, we're talking about these two guys, and we're not even talking about Malcolm Simmons, who honestly could end up being the best of this whole room. He just hasn't really had the opportunity yet. He's going to get it. He's going to get it this year in a lot of different ways. I think this is you talked about how what better wide receivers would help Peyton Thorne, and it did from a statistical standpoint. It didn't fix some of the malignant issues that you had with Peyton, but hey, a better wide receiver situation 100% can help a quarterback. We've seen it. We saw Peyton's production go exponentially higher. It can't correct all the flaws, but it can definitely help. And so you look at Jackson Arnold last year and the wide receiver situation he was in, where everybody was hurt. All of his playmakers were hurt. He's going to come where you're going to have, possibly the best wide receiver duo in the country. You got to think that's going to help you got to think that'll help his production from last year to this year. And then, so will they be? We'll have to see. But I mean, will they be the best duo in the SEC? Will they be the best duo in the country? Obviously, time will tell. But you got a lot of proven potential. I think that's one thing is when you've had a ton of potential, but you've never realized it. We always get our hopes up over potential. Whereas this you kind of got proof of, you got proof out there that these guys are elite. And now they're just going to be 1 year older, 1 year deeper in the system, minus Eric Singleton. He's going to be in his third year in college football. So just another experienced player that's proven it at a top level. You got the ability for some fireworks. This looks like a Hugh Freeze wide receiver room. One that is nightmares for opposing defenses. It didn't take too long. We're getting there. We're getting there. And I think this year you could really, really take off. So let me know what you think. Best wide receiver duo in the SEC, best wide receiver duo in the country. Am I missing anybody? Who are some schools out there to watch with really good wide receiver duos coming in that we're not talking about? And how does Auburn stack up? Love to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I respond to pretty much every single one. So, guys, I really appreciate you listening. Another great week of shows. Got a big basketball game this weekend. We'll try to get a reaction show up shortly after, and just overall go live on Sunday night, just like we always do, and talk about the week at hand and everything that went down in the week ahead, and just have some really good conversations. So I really appreciate you listening. Don't forget to check out Uncle Keith's Red Sauce. Subscribe to The Barn, auburn.com. Take $25 off your annual membership for 2025. Jump in the conversation, jump in the game threads. Overall, jump in the community, have some fun. Really appreciate it. We'll be back again soon. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. Stay bud.
Thanks for listening, and drive home safely.